I chose my wife and son over a 100-year family tradition. Now my parents are crying, begging to see the baby. My son was born into a silent war, not with guns, but with names. And the moment I told my mother he wouldn't be called Henry, she looked at me like I'd just buried 5 generations of our family legacy. I don't know if I'm looking for advice or just some place to put this. Maybe both. Either way, this is something I've never really said out loud, but it's been clawing at the inside of my chest for weeks. My name is Beckett James Wren. I'm 29, a first-time dad, and for the first time in my life, I genuinely have no idea where I stand. My wife, Marley Quinn, and I have been together for 7 years, married for 3. We met at a friend's rooftop party in Portland, not the kind of place I usually feel comfortable in. But she stood there in the corner sipping something fizzy, wearing this forest green sweater and a quiet kind of confidence that pulled me in like gravity. I think I asked her what her favorite sandwich was. She said one with too much mayo, and smiled like she knew I'd remember that forever. And I have. Marley is strong in a quiet, grounding way. She's not loud, not flashy, but she's unshakable. The kind of woman who makes you feel like no matter how chaotic things get, you're not gonna fall apart if she's next to you. She's also fiercely independent. And not in the performative way, she just is. She reads more than anyone I've ever met, has this old soul vibe, and when she loves with the full weight of her heart. We've been through a lot together, 2 miscarriages that gutted us, a rough patch when I lost my job and couldn't get out of bed for weeks, and the kind of long, quiet nights filled with the question of will we be okay. Those nights either tear people apart or bind them in something unspoken. For us, it was the latter. What made it harder was that we spent nearly 3 years trying to conceive. Each month became a cycle of cautious hope, followed by crushing disappointment. Marley used to sit on the edge of the tub holding a negative test with this look that haunts me, not sadness exactly, but emptiness, like the hope had been wrung out of her completely. I remember once finding her asleep in the nursery we had barely started, curled up in the corner with a baby blanket she had crocheted on her lap, even though we hadn't even made it to the 2nd trimester before. So when she got pregnant again last year, it felt like the world had finally exhaled with us. We told only a few people at first. My sister, her best friend, our doctor. We didn't make a big announcement. We just held the news close, like a candle in the wind. Every ultrasound was a quiet miracle. Every heartbeat we heard was another thread mending something that had been torn too many times. Even the smallest things became joyful. Marley would cry while folding tiny onesies. I caught myself whispering to the bump in her belly, promising him the world if he'd just make it to us safely. For the first time in years, our house was filled with lightness again. Soft music playing while we painted the nursery, little debates over whether to get the Moon Mobile or the one with stars. As for names, we took our time. We each had lists on our phones. Late at night, we'd lie in bed reading them out loud, giggling over the weird ones and lingering on the ones that made our hearts pause for a beat. Marley liked nature-inspired names. I liked ones with weight and history. We both agreed the name had to mean something, not just to anyone but to us. A name that would belong to him alone. A name that would say you were wanted, you were hoped for, you are loved. We didn't settle on the final name until the end of the 2nd trimester. And once we did, we both knew it was right. We kept it between us. A secret name for the little soul we were waiting to meet. Marley was 8 months along when everything started unraveling. Now let me give you a bit of background. I come from a very traditional family. The Wrens take pride in heritage, structure, legacy, all those big words that sound noble on paper, but often become chains in real life. Our family gatherings have always felt like living museum exhibits. Black and white portraits on the walls, heirlooms in glass cases, and an unspoken rulebook about how things should be done. You don't question it, you uphold it. That's what I was taught. My father, Henry Wren, is the embodiment of that rulebook. Stoic, authoritative, and absolutely unwavering when it comes to family traditions. He's the kind of man who believes the past holds more value than the present. A man who speaks in statements, not suggestions. Growing up, I respected him, feared him, if I'm being honest. He never yelled, but he didn't need to. Disappointment was his weapon of choice, and it cut deeper than any raised voice could. But to be fair, my childhood wasn't cold or cruel. My parents loved me deeply. My dad might have been firm, But he also came to every school event, every baseball game, every birthday party. He taught me how to change a tire, how to write a proper thank you note, how to stand up straight when the world tried to bend you. My mom, Dory, was the more outwardly affectionate one, warm, funny, and always quick with a hug or a plate of cookies after a hard day. Together they were solid, consistent. And when I brought Marley home for the first time, they welcomed her with open arms. My parents genuinely liked Marley. My mom would invite her to lunch, just the two of them. My dad, though less openly expressive, once told me she had a good head on her shoulders. For years we existed in this peaceful balance. Sunday dinners, holiday traditions, inside jokes. We never had any major fallouts, no shouting matches, no slammed doors. We were by most measures a close family. There's a tradition on his side of the family that the firstborn son of every Wren man is named after his grandfather. It alternates between James and Henry, back and forth like a pendulum through the generations. My grandfather was James, so I'm James too. Legally. Beckett is actually my middle name, one my mom insisted on but never got to use out loud. My father is Henry. So by tradition, our son should be Henry. This has always been treated like law, not preference. It's on the family tree hanging in my parents' study. It's in the christening ceremony script. They recycle every generation. It's in the stories my dad told me when I was little, about how names hold power, how they carry history. I never thought to question it growing up. I guess part of me liked the idea of being part of something bigger, of passing the torch. It felt comforting, like standing on solid ground. But when Marley and I started talking about names, really talking, not just daydreaming, but soul-searching, I realized something shifted. I didn't want to name our son something just because I was expected to. I didn't want his first breath to be bound by someone else's expectations. I wanted his name to reflect who we are, who he is, and the love we poured into getting him here. I wanted it to carry hope, not obligation. Marley felt the same. She didn't push. She asked questions. She said, "What would it mean to you, not your family, if he had a different name?" And when I really sat with it, I knew it would mean freedom. It would mean finally breaking a pattern I wasn't even sure I believed in anymore. So we picked a different name. Something strong, something luminous, something ours. A name that came to us in a quiet moment one evening while we were both reading, feet touching on the couch, hands resting on her growing belly. We didn't tell anyone, not because we were trying to be secretive or dramatic, but because we knew it would cause a stir, and we weren't ready for that noise. We wanted the peace to last. We figured once the baby was here, once everyone saw him, really saw him, they'd fall in love. And the name would be a beautiful surprise. Just a detail. That was naive. 3 weeks before Marley's due date, my mom, Eudora, most people call her Dory, came to stay with us. She said it was to help set up the nursery, cook meals, all the usual motherly support stuff. And to her credit, she did some of that. The house was cleaner, there were warm meals on the table, and she even brought fresh flowers for the kitchen. But none of it could cover the undercurrent that seemed to hum beneath every word, every glance. There was an edge to everything. A tension that crept in through the cracks and made itself at home. Conversations that used to be light became careful. Marley was quieter. I started feeling like we were all playing parts in a play none of us had auditioned for. The air felt thinner somehow, like we were all holding our breath. Then one afternoon, my mom brought out a suitcase she'd kept tucked away. She said she had made something special. Inside were at least a dozen hand-embroidered baby clothes, onesies, tiny hats, burp cloths, even a swaddle. Every single piece had the name Henry stitched across it in these delicate looping letters. The kind of embroidery that takes hours and love and a very specific vision of the future. She handed them to Marley with a proud smile, as though this was the culmination of something sacred. But there was a weight in that gesture, not just of thread and fabric, but of expectation. It didn't feel like a gift. It felt like a declaration. Marley accepted the bundle, ran her fingers along the stitching, and smiled politely. Then she looked up and gently reminded my mother, again, that we weren't naming the baby Henry, that we had chosen a different name. One that meant something to us. The air changed. I swear it got colder, sharper. My mom's smile faltered for just a second, then snapped back into place like a mask. But I saw it. So did Marley. That was when it all cracked. My mom acted like she hadn't heard it before. Like the idea was so offensive, she had erased any past conversation from memory. She started going on about tradition and honor, the weight of legacy, how this wasn't just about a name, but about carrying forward something sacred. Her voice rose in volume and sharpness with each sentence. Marley, to her credit, stayed calm. She sat across from my mother with both hands resting gently on her belly, and explained again that we deeply respected the family tradition, but felt this was a moment where we wanted to start something new. She even said Henry could still be part of our son's name, a middle name, a tribute. But that wasn't enough. Not even close. That night, after dinner, while Marley was in the bedroom reading, my mom cornered me in the kitchen. Her voice was low but cutting, like ice under the skin. "You're really gonna let her do this to us?" she hissed. "Do you have any idea what kind of statement this makes? To our family? To your father? To the people who came before you?" I started to respond, but she cut me off. "You're supposed to be the man of the family. You don't bend over backward just to keep a woman happy. You set the tone, you lead, and you protect your name." I stood there holding onto the counter like it might keep me upright. I told her slowly that this decision wasn't something Marley had pushed through on her own. We'd talked about it for months. We'd cried over it. We'd imagined who our son might become, and what kind of man he'd be, and we both knew we didn't want his first identity to be a weight he didn't choose. But it didn't matter to her. She looked at me like I was already lost. "You're letting go of your roots, of everything we gave you. For what? So she can win? So you can be the husband who pleases his wife but forgets where he came from?" I didn't say anything else. I just walked away. But her words clung to me like smoke. That night, my phone buzzed. A message from my dad. It just said, "You better fix this before it goes too far. The name matters. Don't forget where you come from." I stared at that message for a long time. My father rarely texted, let alone got involved in emotional disputes. But clearly, he had been brought into this. And predictably, he stood exactly where I expected. Behind tradition, behind my mom, behind the name. He had always believed in the legacy above the people. He didn't ask how Marley was doing, or if the pregnancy was okay. Just a reminder that I was stepping out of line, that my son's identity wasn't mine to choose. And again I felt split in two between the boy my parents had shaped and the man I was trying to be now. Then came the baby shower. Dory offered to host it. Marley wasn't thrilled, but she agreed because she didn't want more drama. She even helped bake some of the cupcakes and picked out simple white decorations to keep it low-key. We invited only close friends and immediate family. I thought maybe, just maybe, this could be a peaceful day. I should have known better. Halfway through the party, just after everyone had settled in the backyard with little glasses of lemonade and homemade cookies, my mom stepped out from the kitchen with a grand flourish. In her hands was a giant cake, 3 tiers covered in delicate fondant flowers and baby blue trim. It was decorated beautifully. And right there, across the top tier in bold blue icing, were the words, "Welcome, baby Henry." The silence that followed felt deafening. Marley stood perfectly still. I saw her eyes move from the cake to my mother, and then to me. She didn't say a word. Just slowly put down her drink and stepped away from the group. But before she could leave, my mom followed her. "Marley, don't make this a scene," she said sharply. "It's just a cake. We're all here to celebrate." "You know what, it's not just a cake," Marley replied. Her voice was trembling, but not with weakness, with restraint. "You knew we weren't naming him Henry. You knew, and you did this anyway." My mother crossed her arms. "It's his name whether you like it or not. You don't get to erase generations of family just because you want to be different." That was when Marley snapped. "I'm not erasing anything. I'm protecting my son from being treated like he belongs to someone else before he's even born. I've carried him for 8 months. I've felt every kick, every fear, every hope. And you've done nothing but try to control something that's not yours." Gasps from a few guests around us. My aunt turned away awkwardly. I stepped forward, trying to get between them, but I was too late. Marley suddenly clutched her stomach, her breath catching in her throat. "Beckett," she said, her face going pale. "Something's wrong." We rushed to the hospital. The ride there was a blur of red lights and white knuckles. Marley was in pain and crying, and all I could think was, please, not again, not this time. Fortunately, the doctors were quick. They managed to calm the contractions and stabilize both her and the baby. They told us it had been a stress-induced episode, not uncommon late in pregnancy, but serious enough to be a warning. One of the doctors sat me down afterward and said, very clearly, that Marley's mental health was just as critical as her physical well-being. That emotional stress this late in the pregnancy could put both her and the baby at risk, and that it was up to the family to help shield her from unnecessary tension. That hit hard. I'd known Marley was under pressure. I was under it too, but seeing it manifest like this, seeing her in that hospital bed with IVs in her arm and her face drained of color, it snapped something in me. This wasn't just drama. This wasn't just family friction. It was dangerous. As Marley lay in recovery, I sat beside her, holding her hand while she slept. When she woke, the first thing she said wasn't about the baby or the pain. It was, she's not coming near him. I don't care what anyone says. She doesn't get to do this to us again. Later that night, she asked the nurse to put a note in our file. Dory Wren was not to be allowed to visit. And I supported that decision. My mom didn't take it well. She showed up anyway, despite the clear request we had made through the hospital. She wasn't supposed to be there. Not for medical reasons, not for emotional ones. I met her in the hallway outside Marley's room. She had this sad little stuffed bear in her hands. Probably something she picked up last minute to soften her entrance, and her mascara was smudged beneath her eyes. Whether from real tears or an attempt to look devastated, I couldn't tell. Just let me see her, she said. I just want to see my grandson. I stepped in front of her. He's not here yet. Marley's still recovering. It's not a good time. She blinked. Still? Well, then I should be there with her. I'm his grandmother. What kind of family shuts out their own blood before the baby's even born? I reminded her, gently but firmly, that she was asked not to come. That the stress had nearly sent Marley into premature labor. That this wasn't about punishment. It was about protecting my wife and our unborn child. She looked at me like I'd slapped her. Then she leaned in, her voice low and bitter, the kindness vanishing. You used to be a good son. Now you let some girl turn you against your own blood. What kind of man lets his wife dictate his place in the family? I didn't flinch this time, but inside, something buckled under the weight of her words. And that was it. That was the moment something inside me snapped. I told her, as calmly as I could, that Marley wasn't just my wife. She was the mother of my child. That our son was not a prize in a family war. That he would carry a name chosen out of love, not obligation. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She just turned around and walked away. After everything that happened at the hospital, Marley and I made a decision. One we didn't announce, didn't explain. We packed up and quietly moved to a rental an hour away. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere our names weren't whispered behind backs or passed through family chains of blame. We didn't tell anyone the address, not even my sister. We just needed space. When the baby was finally born, it was just the two of us in that delivery room. No drama. No expectations, just us, exhausted and elated, holding our child as they let out their first cry. It felt like a reset, a sacred silence we had fought hard for. We hadn't spoken the name out loud yet, not to anyone, not even to each other in that moment. It felt too precious, too delicate to say in the presence of everything we'd been through. For those first few days, we simply called him baby, whispered terms of endearment, rocked him in soft light, and existed in that bubble of new parenthood where nothing else mattered. We didn't post anything for the first few days. But eventually, Marley uploaded one picture, just the baby's little hand wrapped around her finger. The caption said nothing, just a single heart. That was enough. The messages started pouring in within hours, first from extended family, then from my sister, and finally, from my parents. My mom called me 6 times. Then a text. I shouldn't have pushed her so hard. I never wanted to hurt Marley. Please call me. It was followed by a voicemail where she was crying, saying she couldn't sleep knowing she might never meet her grandson. For a brief moment, I thought maybe they understood that losing us had shaken something real in them. But then came the second wave. My dad's voice, firm as stone, saying tradition couldn't just be erased. That naming him Henry was bigger than us. Refusing to carry this name is a rejection of everything we gave you. It's disrespect. It's shameful, he wrote. The word shameful stuck with me. They said things like, "Don't be selfish. And this isn't just about you anymore." My mom begged, saying she would drop the name issue if we just let her hold him, though I didn't believe that for a second. And my dad, he stood his ground. Always has. I hadn't responded to any of them. I'd just been sitting there in the dark nursery, watching Marley rock Aurelian to sleep, while my phone buzzed again and again. The baby is perfect. We've talked about the name Aurelian Quinn Wren. It means golden light, and every time he smiles in his sleep or stretches his tiny arms out toward Marley, the name feels like it fits. But we haven't put it on the birth certificate yet. We haven't said it out loud to anyone. It's still just ours. A quiet maybe. We still hadn't formally announced the name, and part of me wondered if that was a mistake. If maybe by hiding it I was still trying to protect everyone, even the people who'd hurt us. I caught myself one evening standing in the hallway, staring at an old framed family photo we had brought with us by accident during the move. My mom, my dad, me at 10 years old, standing stiff in a church suit. I stared at it for a long time, wondering if we had been happy then, if they'd ever really seen me. If this break was permanent, or just a scar we'd carry into the future. Some nights I lie awake holding the baby, turning the name over and over in my head. Aurelian, Henry, Aurelian, Henry. One feels like the future, the other feels like a ghost in the room. Marley says she's done. That Dory won't be in our son's life unless she genuinely apologizes and accepts our choice. But I don't know if my mom can do that. She's built her whole identity around this legacy. And my dad, he won't back down. Not now. Not ever. I love my wife. I love my son. But I also grew up thinking family was everything. And now I've helped tear that apart. Part of me hopes they'll come around. That they'll realize this isn't about a name. It's about respect. About trust. About building something new instead of forcing the old onto what's barely begun. But another part of me isn't sure they ever will. And I'm just stuck here. Between the past and the future. Between loyalty and love. Between the family I came from and the one I'm building. So yeah, that's my story. I don't know if I'm the villain, the victim, or just the guy in the middle. But I do know one thing. I won't let my son grow up thinking he has to earn love by being obedient. He'll know he's loved just for being himself. Even if that means I lose part of where I came from to protect where we're going.